Hey everybody, Target Pistol Guy, thank you so much for visiting. This is a channel devoted to target pistols and target shooting, and today we've got another great video for you, sort of in the vein of some of the videos we've been doing in the past. Today we're going to be talking about the master's journey. In the last video that I did on Zen and the Art of Archery, reviewing the book, I talked somewhat about the master's journey or the master's wheel. And this is not a one-size-fits-all system, but this is kind of how, in reading those books and just thinking about my own experience in shooting, how I have described the journey to other people, and I wanted to do that for you, and hopefully it's helpful. This isn't perfect. This is just the way that I view the process of beginning to follow pistol shooting, or really any discipline, to the point of being a master at it, which is the process that I hopefully am headed on. So I did it on a B8. I figured that would be, I just needed anything that was circular. I figured that would be sufficient. So I'm gonna move a little bit closer so that you can see it, and we're gonna go with it. So when you start anything, and target pistol specifically, really, to me, becoming a master has 4 elements, and they aren't always done in order, but generally they're done in sequence with some overlap, right? So the first thing is just simply, you cannot start the process to become a master without desire, which is the first one. It'll be up at 12 o'clock. So desire is, it can be just interest. It could be a burning passion, you know, to be a pistol shooter. It could be really anything, but it's the thing that gets you to the firing line. It's the thing that gets it out of there. Maybe you just went to the range with a friend and they were shooting bullseye style, and you're like, man, what is that? That looks really, really hard. And you're right, it is. Or it could just be, maybe you saw a YouTube video, to check out pistol shooting, and you wanted to learn a little bit more. But it all begins with desire, okay? The next one is going to be experience. So typically, this is the process of learning the sport itself, meaning the mechanics around the sport. Some of that has to do with equipment, some of that, but usually it has to do with how the sport is conducted and what it is. And so that may be like the things you learn at your first match, like just learning the sport, learning the gear, stuff like that. That is experience. And I think that really, I mean, it's like a season or so under your belt. You sort of understand, you know, how bullseye shooting, whichever discipline under the realm of bullseye, it could be air pistol, it could be, 2700 matches, it could be service pistol, how it's oriented. And then that's really, I mean, that's about the time you're getting your first initial classification. Maybe you're figuring out in terms of gear and setup, like things you like, things you don't like. And then to me, this sort of like next chunk is all technique. This is where the true nuts and bolts of being a proficient shooter come into. This is where you're starting to gain those classifications, and you're starting to see success. And this has a lot to do, I think this is sort of the area where there's a lot of shot process. You're starting to establish your pattern of being able to execute that perfect shot consistently over time. And then it also has to do with being able to call your shots. This is where calling, I think, develops into a shooter. And calling, to me, I mean, there are some people out there, they're like, oh yeah, that was a scratch 9, or that was a far left 10 o'clock. We call it like a 9:30 10 or something like that. To me, calling, and the way that I've been taught and the way that I agree with, is that calling is either there's a good shot or a bad shot. Yeah, and we don't even call it good or bad. We'll just say a yes or no. That's another Jim Hendersonism. Did I execute my proven shot plan to the best of my ability? Yes. Or did I execute my proven shot plan to the best of my ability? No. You want more yeses than those? You know, that's pretty much it. But that's this like world of technique. That's where really the foundation is laid to be a fantastic shooter. But then I think that, and I would think I'm in this sort of area, but then there's this long path that to me is now my shooting. You've had some shooting successes. Maybe you won a match. Maybe you've got some EIC points, whatever discipline you're in. But now you're staring down, like, where do I really want to take this? Do I want to go to does this want to be a casual thing for me? Or do I truly want to take this to be a burning passion in my life and take it as far as it goes? Because once you have your technique and you have your equipment and you have your experience, they're really the fights that are remaining, as long as you have money, are all internal. And so there's this long path up the back half of the wheel that is all about mastery. And so mastery is how to maintain calm under pressure, right? How to put your center of focus from future or outcome driven to present driven. You know, how do you see the sport in relation to the other things in your life? This is a big one, how do you learn as a shooter, right? How do you practice? How can you approach this sport with a monotonous and dedicated attention? One of my favorite quotes that I saw about just this whole process had nothing to do with shooting. It was all about running. And it was this runner on the Marine Corps running team. If I can find it, I'll post up the link to it. But it was this video, and she talks about, she said, you know, in order to be the best, right, or accomplish what she needed, you have to become friends with the boredom of mastery. And I don't know if she came up with that quote or if she's quoting someone else, but for me, that perfectly encapsulates the experience of trying to battle some of these internal pressures that happen when you're making your way back up that wheel, because it is boring, right? When you're doing something in repetition, that is the process of mastery. That is being the best shooter that you can be. And it's, you know, repetition is a part of life, and especially in bullseye. And so you just have to be best friends with that boredom. But a lot of time there's burnout, right? And so, but the further you go, you get back up to desire, right? You have to, and I assume I'm not up there. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you know when I'm on top. And I think the fact that as you do this boredom thing, you sort of make yourself back up has, in a way, it relates almost to some of those sayings that people would have about you have to see the world as a child. Like a lot of that Zen book was about seeing and viewing the world as a child. That doesn't mean you view without knowing. It means that you are experiencing in the moment. Speaking of in the moment, another great thing is, if for anybody who hasn't watched The Last Dance on Netflix, it follows the essentially the 90s era Chicago Bulls. But one of the things they said about Michael Jordan, one of the greatest athletes of all time, was that it wasn't that he was more physical or that he was a better basketball player. Certainly he was a great basketball player. That's not what separated him from the pack. What separated him from the pack was that he could be more in the moment and more present than anybody on the court. His entire world shut down when he was doing that, and I think that some of that comes into play when you get back up to desire. Also, it makes sense why whenever you're a new shooter and you talk to a master or a high, I mean, this would be like high master world, and you talk to a high master and you ask them, how do I shoot better? And they always give you like, I don't know, for me, bullseye advice is so funny because it's always so simple. So that master will just tell you, well, just put the sight where it needs to go and pull the trigger without moving it, right? I mean, that's like, or, you know, focus on the front sight, right? Focus on the front sight is like the Zen saying of bullseye shooting. Just focus on the front sight. That's why some of the advice that comes, you know, around from masters seems like to a new shooter, like, well, yeah, but I'm doing that and it seems like way harder. So that's it. That is the master's journey. Pretty cool. It kind of reminds me, I guess you call him one of my heroes, again, this is not from shooting, is well, I guess he's American now, but the French-born chef, Jacques Pepin, and he says that to make great food, you really just need 3 things. We have 4, but you know, I'm sure desire is a part of that too. He says you have to be a master in technique. Well, we got that there. You have to have good ingredients. Got that here. That's equipment and experience. And then you have to have some talent. That's when truly greatness comes. So there's a lot of that, a lot of application of the master's wheel. But here it is. Maybe you can make one for yourself. Instead of keeping all of those bullseye targets that you shot, you can keep this, write it on a B8, put it up in your shooting room, your gun room, and just reflect on it. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for visiting Target Pistol Guy. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't. We're going to have a lot of great stuff coming up for you, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to make this place a home on YouTube for precision pistol shooting, bullseye shooting, air pistol, all that cool stuff. A lot of great stuff to come. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, it went.
I mean, I hit the
Probably off
target.
the leg of the